If there's a single comment on one of my videos that I can expect without fail, it'll be someone admonishing me because I used a flash grenade once against a non-transformed villager in RE4 when it launched on the GameCube, saw that it stunned them, and proceeded to never use one again because a headshot gets the same job done. Guys, it's been years. I now know how powerful they are. Please stop showing up to my house and trying to fight me. But if there's one that doesn't deal with the controversy that I brought down around my own head, it's something to the tune of, why in the name of everything survival horror have we not seen a re-release of classic Resident Evil games on modern platforms yet? And you know, it's a reasonable question. Now, those of us who live and breathe this series would already know that these games have had working PC versions for more than 20 years now, and there have been fan-led alterations to make them perfectly playable on modern systems with modern controllers. But to be totally honest, I don't exactly expect your average person to know about the Japanese Media Kite and Source Next releases of Resident Evil, and I'd expect even less to know about projects like the incredible Classic Rebirth and Seamless HD. However, it seems like none of that really matters anymore because we are now getting full-blown re-releases of REs 1, 2, and 3 on goodoldgames.com. A collection I've known about for a while now thanks to a contact there, but I wasn't really sure if I was allowed to talk about it. Here's the issue though, what you've been looking at is not footage of that collection. This is. Alright, let's get into it. What's up guys, I'm Jared from Avalanche Reviews. Welcome back to the Resident Evil Retrospective.
Why on earth are you here?
I just had something I wanted to check. Now, let's get back to searching for the lost captain and Chris, shall we?
Alright, so let's start out with some facts. As I write this script, Good Old Games is selling a bundle of Resident Evils 1, 2, and 3, but right now, RE1 is the only game that any of us have access to. I would imagine influencers and content creators with a larger reach than mine would have seen the other two PC ports already, but I haven't had a chance to put hands on them myself, so today we're just looking at the first.
Resident Evil.
And to be totally honest, it's not great.
What is it?
Now I apologize, but before we get any further into this, we're gonna have to cover the rather sordid history of Resident Evil PC ports. The very first version of the game to hit home computers was the Japanese NEC port in '96. Now this version would work its way to Europe in the next year, but around the same time, Capcom themselves got to work on porting the game to Windows 95. That same year, Virgin Interactive released a completely new PC port of Part 1 in Europe, which would eventually find its way to US shores. But in a really weird mix-up, American copies didn't ship with the colored, uncensored cutscenes despite being advertised as such. Which is a scenario that I'm sure a lot of you will remember was mirrored in one of the PS1 releases. Kinda crazy how Capcom seems to repeat history so often. Although to be fair, it was nice that they offered the uncensored cutscenes as a download on their website to smooth things over. And I can fully understand if you're all completely lost by this point, but you gotta stick with me because in 1999, Japan would get what most consider to be the definitive PC port of Resident Evil 1. This Media Kite release of the game was made to take better advantage of Windows 98, and for all intents and purposes, this was the highest fidelity RE1 experience a person could conceivably have. Okay, so I know that history lesson might have seemed a little arbitrary, but I kinda had to go through it because the GOG release of RE1 seems to be using the Virgin Interactive US release of the game. I can tell that because, for whatever reason, the FMVs in that specific port had an even lower frame rate than the PS1 originals, let alone the Media Kite version. Alright, quick correction here. I forgot that the Media Kite release also uses the 10 FPS FMVs, but I still think this is the Virgin Interactive version. On the plus side though, we were able to get the uncensored ones, which is a blessing, as I always thought these colorized, gory FMVs were way more effective in setting up the mood of the game. And speaking of setup, installing the GOG release of RE1 is dead simple, like you would imagine from these guys. And for those of you that don't know, any game you buy from Good Old Games comes DRM free, which means you don't need a special launcher like Steam to get access to your games that you've already purchased. You just download the installer and that's yours forever. Once installed, you can mess around with a few relatively limited settings in the DirectX wrapper they're using, and to be totally honest, I wasn't able to notice a difference in the game's visuals when using any level of anti-aliasing or anisotropic filtering. As far as I'm concerned, there's only one setting on this screen that makes any difference at all, and it is pivotal. I can't stress enough that unless your monitor's resolution is an integer value of the game's native 640 by 480, do not set the scaling mode to screen fit. I'm using a 4K monitor here, and the difference between a clean 4x scale and the game's default 4.5x screen fit scale is just absolutely insane. I played through most of the game on screen fit mode because I didn't think it'd make that much of a difference, but look at the nasty bilinear filtering going on. Pixel edges are soft and smeary, and the text is almost vomit-inducing. The only problem with using integer is you're going to have to play the game using both letter and pillar boxing, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but definitely not something I'd expect from a modern re-release like this. Now, getting into actually playing the game, aside from the video stuff, it's kind of great. My PS5 controller was detected and the button configuration was correct without me having to mess with any settings. I just booted up the EXE and I was able to play Resident Evil without any tweaking. Although you can mess with the button setup if you don't like the default assignments. Other than that though, this is just Resident Evil 1. Nothing more and nothing less. Now I do have to mention that some people are reporting issues with stuttering or frame skipping, and while I didn't experience that myself, I did notice my buddy G-Man Lives on Twitter was having the same problem and he posted his settings. Just about the only significant difference that I could tell between mine and his is that he actually specified 1080p 144Hz, where I just kept that field set to desktop default. Now it is worth mentioning I'm also using a 144Hz monitor to play the game, so I'm not sure why only one of us is having the issue, but if I had to guess, I'd bet the solution is somewhere in that setting field.
You're right.
And at this point, with the wonky scaling and potential performance issues, the question does need to be asked, why not just play the classic Rebirth version? Oh, and by the way, if you found those words to be a bit foreign, I've made an extensive video covering Resident Evil mods that should sort that issue out lickety-split. But more importantly, the answer to the previous question is, you don't necessarily have to choose one or the other. Now, I originally tried adding the classic rebirth.dll to the GOG install folder, but I got no results. But according to the always awesome Andy from Biohazard Declassified, you can choose to install the Japanese version and it works perfectly. Now, this is information I'm literally finding out as I record this voiceover, so I haven't had a chance to try it myself, but theoretically, the cr.dll file is all you need to get this game running at 4K, not only in a perfect state, but a completely accurate one. Not to mention being able to add in functionality like quick turns or tactical reloads, the kind of stuff that wouldn't hit the series until its second entry. Alright, so if the classic Rebirth mod does make this version of the game essentially perfect, why am I and so many other people being so negative right now? Well, let's face it, a good majority of people just want to download a game, double-click its executable, and start playing it. And I would imagine not only would that kind of person not know about Classic Rebirth, but they probably wouldn't be able to navigate their way to the install folder for RE1 if their lives depended on it. And you know, I really can't fault that kind of mindset. Personally, I enjoy tinkering and finding the absolute best settings before I even see the title screen, but I can't exactly say that that gives me significantly more fun than the theoretical person I just invented for this argument. In short, if it's not included with the official download, a good majority of people just aren't gonna get it. So while Classic Rebirth is the perfect response to the "this port is messed up" argument, it's flawed in the fact that it relies on the end user to obtain on their own. You know, in the short burst of internet that I've been getting this morning, I'm seeing a bit of a divide. Some people are thrilled over this release, and others find themselves, let's say, apprehensive. And I get both sides of that debate. I mean, we've all been wanting something like this for so long, but the fact remains that the fan-made options are still the absolute best and most accurate ones. But that being said, I'm not sure I would call this a bad release.
I can't believe... What the hell is this place anyway?
Of course, it's massively disappointing that they went with a bilinear scaling method and didn't swap out the low frame rate FMVs for versions that look and run much better. But at the end of the day, this is a very, very playable, softly scaled version of RE1 that can run on a modern PC and use a modern controller. Yes, we have had access to exactly that for years and years now, but I get the feeling this wasn't exactly made for the kind of person willing to play Classic Rebirth or any other fan-developed restoration like the Seamless HD mod. At worst, I would call this a lazily cobbled together PC port released for normies to re-experience a game from their past, and while it would be ideal to have them put some real effort into it, I think it's likely to serve its purpose just fine. In the meantime, since they are using a relatively simple DirectX wrapper, I would imagine making changes and improvements to stuff like scaling would be fairly easy to do, and beyond that, you could say RE modders have already fixed it. So no, I definitely wouldn't call this a travesty on the same level as the Silent Hill HD collection. From my perspective, this is a perfectly functional, easy to access version of RE1 that you're not going to have to need obscure knowledge of mod projects to get working, although it does help. There is a lot of good in that, and while I am disappointed in the effort put into this port, there is something to be said about making this old-ass, incredible game available to the wider PC gaming population in a convenient way. I purchased my own copy because I want to support more releases like this, and hopefully videos like mine will guide good old games in the right direction with the 2 RE games that haven't released yet. And if it doesn't, hey, the modding community has already shown that they can do just about anything if one of these games is involved. So keep your chin up, RE fans. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to get back to work on the video that I was editing before all this got dropped in my lap. I hope to see all of you again sometime, but if I don't, thank you so much for watching the Resident Evil Retrospective. Hey guys, I didn't write out anything to say at this end card, so if you like this video, try supporting me on Patreon or YouTube members, or come over here and give me a big old kiss. But other than that, I love you, and I'll see all you guys later. Peace out.